Welcome to Thinking Outside the Couch. I'm Dr. Larry Kuttner. In this episode, the joys of failure. At first, it sounds paradoxical. One of the things that holds back some of the people in my mentorship program is that they've been so successful in the past. They're smart, even brilliant. They've earned good grades in school and good scores on standardized tests. They've received advanced academic degrees. They've held prestigious jobs. What they're missing in their lives is failure. Sure, they may have been turned down for dates, and when they got older, also turned down for jobs, promotions, or grants. But those are private failures. No one needs to know if the college you went to, the job you accepted, or even the person you married was really your third choice. I'm talking about big, honking, public failures. The stuff you can't dismiss with a quick rationalization. Now, it doesn't have to be a Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job size catastrophe. But it should be something that shakes you up and causes you to ask some fundamental questions about your own competence. Most important, it should give you the experience of recovering successfully from a significant screw-up, as well as the confidence that comes with that experience. I think back to the late 1970s when I left a job with public television in New York City to open my own business. In retrospect, I should have easily been able to predict the upcoming financial debacle, but I was young, naive, and filled with hubris. I didn't know it then, but it was a great time to fail. The details of my early business are of little consequence. Suffice it to say that it involved a convoluted and illogical scheme to syndicate some radio programming on travel as a way of building up the necessary funds to do the work I really wanted to do in health communications. Now, that's kind of like taking a job in fish farming because you'd really like to develop computer animation software. And as I said, I was young and stupid. The product I developed was good. In fact, I'm still proud of it. But I hadn't thought through how I could make it profitable. I plunged into that business without sufficient cash reserves or an outside stream of income. Within a few months, I was charging groceries to credit cards and getting telephone calls from debt collection agencies. The gas company shut off the heat to the house I was renting. I lied about my background, omitting the fact that I had a PhD, so that I could get temporary jobs as a secretary typing up retail pickle sales reports for a marketing company during the evening, and entering wholesale orders for eyeliner at a cosmetics company during the day. At the time, it felt not so much like Greek drama as it did a sordid, cautionary tale. After all, I, the protagonist, had been a hotshot psychologist. A little more than a year earlier, I'd been a fellow at the Mayo Clinic, wearing a three-piece suit. It was the 1970s, remember? I left Mayo to develop national programming for PBS. I was a guy on the move, a man with an unlimited future. Now I was reduced to doing the type of work that my mother, who'd been a high school dropout, had done just to keep the financial wolves from the door. It was indeed a cruel parody. But the worst part about it was the vivid, throbbing realization that I had failed in a massive and undeniable way. Like many people in that situation, I made the leap from ruminating about my actions, I started a business that failed, to describing the essence of who I was. I am a failure. It was a slippery slope, and I was accelerating downhill. In retrospect, one of the reasons for my despondency was that this was the first significant personal failure of my life. Sure, I'd flunked an inorganic chemistry course, hadn't made the cut for my high school soccer team, and had been turned down by some colleges and graduate schools to which I'd applied. But I could rationalize those trivialities and move on. This time, I was stunned and embarrassed to the core. I didn't know if I could recover from my failure because I'd never been put in this position before. As illogical as it seems now, I remember worrying that I'd never get a professional job again and would be stuck holding down a lifetime of temporary secretarial and data entry clerk jobs. Clearly, I was doomed. Even though I was a clinician with a framed psychology license on my wall, I could not spot my own irrational beliefs. It took nearly a year to start turning things around. My ego was as bruised as my bank account. I lined up a job as the health and science reporter for the CBS television station in Minneapolis. Friends of mine from graduate school graciously let my wife and me share their home rent-free for about 4 months. In retrospect, I'm grateful for having had that opportunity to fail spectacularly, and especially for having had the experience of recovering from my failure. There's no question that this failure was painful on many levels, including the fact that it wiped me out financially. The best part of that awful experience, however, was that it took away my fear of failure. I had met the beast. It was horrible, but not as bad as the beast I had feared in my imagination. I knew now that while it might wound me, it would not destroy me. Those people in my mentorship program and who attend my workshops, who have no intimate experience with recovering from significant failure, still hold terrifying images of what failure might mean for them. Often, the more success they've had in their lives, the more frightening the image of failure becomes. What holds them back is their confusion of small failures with disasters as they try to build or expand their multifaceted practices. Instead of rationally limiting their risk, they avoid what they perceive as risk altogether. Often there are hidden and greater risks that they ignore as well. Because they have been successful for so many years, they worry that a small failure will inevitably lead to a calamity. So we work on ways that they can limit their risks, hedge their bets as they grow more comfortable. It's always struck me when I've gotten together with groups of other successful entrepreneurs who are talking about business that the stories told with the most vigor are not those of our successes. There are stories about failure. We compete for the seemingly bizarre crown of who'd done the stupidest, most self-defeating thing. What we all know, however, is that each of us has climbed out of that pit and has lived to tell about it. We are successful, in part, because we have failed. You can find a lot more information at thinkingoutsidethecouch.com. I'm Dr. Larry Kuttner.